In this video, we're going to cover the section right here, the alignment section of the home tab in the ribbon up here. This is really going to allow us to move and kind of change the data kind of where it's going to show up in the Excel. So starting off, I'm going to start with sort of the most basic, and this is going to be the horizontal alignment of our cells. And right now, you can see they're kind of aligned to the left of the cell, but if I select something and I choose this one, this is the center alignment. And all that does is just move the data in the cell to the actual center of the cell. And you can probably guess what these other ones are going to do. This is going to be right alignment, moves it to the right, and then we can do left alignment. So by default, everything's left alignment, but we can change those. Again, we can select multiple things and move them all at the same time if we want. I'm going to go ahead and center each one of those. Now, these three up here are the vertical alignments. By default, everything's going to show up on the bottom of each cell, but I can go ahead and do kind of like a center alignment here, and that's going to align it in the center vertically, or I can move it to the top. So we have all these options here, and we can move and format our text anyway. I'm going to put them just all kind of dead center in the middle of the cell. Now this one's a little bit funky. I really don't use this often, but if you really want to, you can change the angle of the data in the cell. So if you kind of want to get a little bit fancy, I can put grapes going sideways here. I personally never use this, but we do have the option there. Sometimes you may use this. You can actually rotate it so it's going vertical or vertically, and you can switch it so it's going the other way. So you just have these four different options, and if you really want to get serious about it, you can go in here and actually change, how many degrees do I want to angle my text, and I can go ahead and hit OK, and angle it a little bit more, so I don't just have to use these default values here. I'm going to go back and just select 0 because I don't want to move it at all. And again, we can change kind of our alignment here. This is just more options to change how we want our stuff aligned. I'm going to go ahead and change it back. So that's really with alignment here. Now, the next thing that we can do is change the indent that we have, and this is slightly different than changing the general alignment. I'm going to move this all the way to the left, and I can select an individual cell, go ahead and move the indent where that data is going to start, and basically, it's just it's as if you hit tab or something, but before you typed in that data. Now, you can make it go smaller or larger there. I forgot to tell you about both those buttons. Now, the wrap text option, if I go here and say, what is, oops, if I can spell, what is your favorite kind of fruit? Then you see all of this data is actually in cell A1. We talked about this a little bit earlier, and it's kind of flooded over into these other cells. But if I want to wrap it will actually contain everything in that cell. So let's go ahead and wrap it. And what that does is it's forcing the text to stay within the cell. The only issue here is this cell really isn't big enough to display everything, so I would actually have to change the height here, but as you see, once it can fit everything, then it's going to display it. So you have to be a little bit careful when you use wrap text, just to make sure you don't have any text that's hiding kind of behind these other cells. Now, this is something that I use quite often. We have all of these different what they call merge options. So basically each cell is separated, but we can actually combine two cells into one. And oops, sorry. I'm just gonna, it's usually just best to see it. So I'm gonna go ahead and merge and center these cells. So cell A, B, and C have now kind of become one giant cell, and you can see that. And now you see this wrap option, it can actually fit because this cell's a lot bigger now. I'm gonna go ahead and actually move that up there. So you can see we can really change how these cells are. Now that being said, though this is now B1 and C1, it's kind of all three of these added together. The data still exists in cell A1. It just kind of consumed both B and C1. Those cells don't really exist anymore. They're all part of A1. So we can really change kind of the sizes, what kind of data we want to show up in different cells. So what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to extend this just a little bit more. Oh, that undid it, sorry. One more cell, and then I'm going to do the same to each one of these using the different options. So I can just merge the cells if I want, and that's just going to merge those two cells that I had. I can merge across, and what that does is basically if I select a lot of cells, it's just going to merge each one of these that are side by side. So you see here we have the merge across, and it kind of combined all of those cells into one. I don't really want to do that right now, so I'm just going to do the two. Merge these cells, and merge and center, just merges them together and then centers it automatically. So let's actually do that to each one of these. So now you see this kind of looks a little more organized, a little bit better because we have all these different options here. And then we can always select cells and go ahead and unmerge them. That will just undo everything kind of that we've done here. But you see from what we learned in the last video, if I want to go here and let's add some borders, and then I'm going to add a border here as well. And now I think this looks pretty good. It's divided our data out in a nice way. We don't have to rely, on these kind of predetermined gray lines to organize everything. We can move it, kind of adjust ourselves. So even if I wanted an entire paragraph here, I could, wrap the text so it's all going to fit in this nice box, and then adjust it, and it runs all the way across without, disturbing kind of these other cells. And it's going to align perfectly with everything else, and that's why we want to merge cells instead of just using. I'm going to unmerge this instead of just using this. And let me actually not wrap it. Instead of this option here, because it just doesn't look very good because I can't center it, because if I center it, it's in relation to cell A1, so it's just going to center it there. I would actually have to bring this cell across, but then you see it's going to mess with everything else that we've done. So that's really why we need that merge function, because I want to merge cell D, C, B, and A1 into one and center the text. Otherwise, it's just really difficult to do. So this is a really useful thing that you can use a lot to really organize your data in a good way.